A couple of weeks ago, I preached a sermon called Lest We Forget. It was on Memorial Day, and it was geared around the sacrifice of men and young boys and young girls that went off to fight in World War II, and all the people that died in Vietnam, and just all kinds of wars that we fought over the years, and how easy it is for us to forget what happened to them. And I connected it with Psalm 103, and I told you it was part one. I did talk to some of you afterwards, and I did mention a particular event in World War II that was the USS Indianapolis. And I found out that somebody here's father was on that boat. And he was one of the 300 and so that survived. And that was John L's father. I did not know that. John L. told me that afterwards. And the whole sermon was wrapped around how easy it is for us to forget because we weren't there. We weren't there. We didn't see any of that stuff. We didn't, we only have words on a page. We only have pictures. That's all we have. We can watch movies. That's all we can do. And so it's really easy for us to forget what's happened in those sacrifices. I wasn't in the jungles of Vietnam. We have people here that were. I don't know what that was like. I have no idea. I don't know what freedom really cost because I wasn't there. And I didn't see it. And I talked about this particular text one Friday night. And the next day, so some of you have heard part of this, at least in a toned down version. This one won't be toned down. Won't be toned down. I talked to Cole the next day, and he said, he said, you have got to preach that at Central. And I said, nah, I can't do that. He said, you have to. He said, they have to hear it just like you just told me. I said, okay. So here goes. Pull up the first slide is Philippians chapter 1, and it's verse 27. And if you see right there, verse 27, it starts out, it says, whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. The gospel of Christ is God's plan of salvation. Okay, that's really what it is. From the very beginning, before creation, all the way up until Jesus and the crucifixion and the death and the burial and the resurrection is the culmination of that plan of salvation. That's what it is. That's what the gospel is. And that verse says, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel. How you do that? You weren't there. You weren't there. Well, I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you there this morning. But I want to share with you a story. How many of you have ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan? Many of you. Good. The movie starts, and it's been out for years and years, so I'm not going to ruin it for any of you, okay? Because if you haven't seen it by now, so well. The movie starts with an old man standing at a cross in a cemetery. And he's standing there. You don't know who he is. Have no idea. And he starts to think back, and the first picture you see is a picture of water coming in on a beach at Omaha Beach. That's June the 6th, 1944. The invasion of France has begun. And the movie is about a squad of Army Rangers led by Captain Miller, who is played by Tom Hanks. And after they've gotten onto the beach and everything, they have this mission, and the mission is to go save this Private Ryan, go find him. Because the problem is, Private Ryan is one of 4 brothers, and 3 of them have died already. And the State Department doesn't want that other one, and this is based, not a true story, but it's based on true events. There was a group of brothers that died on one ship. The ship got torpedoed and killed all of them at one time. And so the State Department said, we're not going to do that anymore. Won't do that no more. So the mission for Captain Miller and his squad of about 7 or 8 guys is to go and find a needle in a stack of needles. Because Private Ryan is part of the 101st Airborne, who has been dropped all over Normandy, scattered all over the place. They don't have a clue where he's at. And so the movie is about them looking for this private. That's what the movie's about. And you see all of the things that happen. What happens to the squad? What happens to the men of this squad of Rangers? One of them gets shot by a sniper, and he's out in the pouring rain. They can't get to him, and he's dying right in front of them. And they can't get to him because the German sniper is in a building, and they don't know where he's at. Another time, their medic, who they dearly love, their medic, he gets shot by machine gun fire. And he's dying, and he's trying to tell them how to save his own life. Because they don't know what they're doing. And he's asking, did the blood go all the way through? What does the blood look like? And he dies right there in their arms. And finally, by pure luck, they find this kid. All of a sudden. And he is at a bridge in Remagen, which is a fictional city. And they find him at this bridge with his other guys, and they're guarding this bridge, and they know that a German counterattack's coming. So they tell him what's going on, what he needs to do, and he says, I ain't leaving. And Captain Miller says, well, the State Department's supposed to tell your mother when you get killed. Another telegram comes. He said, you tell her that I was with the only brothers I had left. And so they stay. And as it gets close to the end of the movie, this whole squad of Rangers, except for one, I believe, dies. Captain Miller is shot in the chest, and he is dying. And Private Ryan is there, and he calls him to him, and he whispers something, and he gets him right down close, and he says, earn it. You earned this. And what he was telling that young man is that a lot of blood was shed for you to keep you alive. You make sure you earn this. What was happening. So it pans back to that man at the cemetery, and you find out that's Private Ryan at the end of the movie. And his wife walks up and he says, tell me I've been a good man, that I've done enough. Because he spent his whole life trying to live up to what Captain Miller and that squad of Rangers did for him. This says, whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel. I know we can't earn salvation. That's not how this works, okay? But I am charged here with conducting myself in a manner worthy of what happened. I can't do that if I don't know what happened. Okay, so we're going to look at it this morning. And some of it's going to get really graphic. And I want it to. I want you to be able to close your eyes, and I want you to paint a picture of this guy who is bound and determined to go to a cross so that you don't have to die in your sin. That's what this is about this morning. Okay? Now, we're not going to go in the text to this, but it picks it up in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he is terrified, scared to death, begging for his life. Sweating so profusely, some say, and the text kind of leads you to look at, that he may be actually sweating blood out of his pores. Now, that is a real condition that can happen. I don't know for sure if that's what happened, but he is in turmoil because he knows what's coming. He knows. He knows what the death is going to look like. Remember something, guys, crucifixion wasn't a new phenomenon. They knew what that looked like. They knew the ghastliness of it. They knew the horror, the absolute nastiness of it. They knew. So he knew what was coming, and he knew how much they hated him. So by the time they arrest him, by the time they get him there, he's wore out. So I want you to picture this guy in your mind, okay? I want you to picture this scene and this guy because your life depends on it. This depends on it. Are you going to conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel? And the only way you can do that is you have to say, okay, this is what happened and this is what was paid for me. This is what he was willing to do so that I could live. And quit making that cross out to be Jesus' cross. He didn't deserve to be on that cross. You did. I did. That's your cross. Got it? So everything that happens on that cross happened in place of you. You should have been there. What he was willing to do so that you don't have to be on that cross. Okay? And so they arrest him and they take him to the court. Jimmy, I want you to turn to the one at Matthew 26. Okay? Now, He's come before the guard, the high priest, and he has said that he is the Son of God. Blasphemy. This is what blasphemy. All right. So in verse 67, it says, "Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, 'Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?'" Any of you ever been in a street fight? You ever been in a real street fight? I mean, fist flying, boots kicking street fight. You ever been there? Kenneth, I know you have. No, you have. We've talked about it. I've been there. That is a nasty, nasty mess. You ever been hit in the mouth by somebody with a rock hard fist? I had a guy hit me one time, knocked me clean out. When I woke up, he was on top of me, hit me in the top of the head. I had knots all over the top of my head the next day. Wore me slap dab out. And these guys are punching him with their fist and slapping him in the mouth. You ever been slapped in the mouth? Somebody slap you in a fight or something, slap you really hard? I'm getting the picture, y'all like, what? I don't see any heads nodding, nothing. Has that ever happened to you? You cannot begin to imagine what this guy went through if you don't start to picture in your mind what this looked like. He's bleeding now. John, you ever seen a fist fight where somebody didn't bleed? You ever seen one where it didn't bleed? They always bleed, right? So now he's bleeding. He's already started bleeding. Okay? He's bleeding out of a nose that's bleeding, mouth that's cut, something. Maybe he's got a gash over his eye. He's gotten hit numerous times. And they don't like him. Okay? I've never been in a fight where people liked each other. I just never have. Most of the fights I've ever seen and ever been in, we didn't really like each other much. So it got really intense really quick. They don't like him. So they start slapping him and beating him. Remember who this is. This is the Son of God. Taking your punishment that he begged not to have to go through. Okay, that's this guy. All right, understand? So he's gotten his clock cleaned already. Okay? And it says that they spit on him. You ever been spit on? We were playing football in the front yard one time at my house, and one of the guys that the one that knocked me out later on, he spit like this and spit on one of the other guy's calves. Oh my gosh, it was on. Man, they were fighting in the front yard, rolling around, duking it out. Just because and it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. He just spit on him. These guys were trying to spit in his face. How degrading for someone to spit on you, to spit in your face. The degradation of it. And then they slapped him in the mouth and slapped him on the side of his face. His ears, maybe his ears are ringing. He can't even hear anything because somebody slapped him so hard in the side of the head. Understand, we don't have a lot of details. I'm just trying to get you to see between the lines what it may have looked like. What did this look like, and what was happening to him because of you? So that you can take that verse in Philippians 1 and really make it something where it means something in your life. I can conduct myself in a manner worthy of, because I'm standing at that cross and I'm saying, okay, am I doing this the right way? Am I conducting myself the right way? I'm going to bring this up to you the whole time I'm up here. In fact, when I at the invitation, I'm going to ask you the same thing. We're going to look at that verse again. Now go to Matthew 27, Jimmy. Let's look at the first slide. Now this is on in the trial. All right, Pilate's trying to get rid of him. Wants him gone. So he released Barabbas to him. Okay, they released this killer. They released him, but he had Jesus flogged. I'm going to stop right there. Jimmy, pull up the picture of the whip. This is called a flagellum, or called a short whip. You see what it's like? It had pieces of, this one shows it with little metal stars, but it had pieces of bone and sometimes a piece of metal at the end of it. There was usually 3 of them. They called it the cat of 9 tails, but this was more appropriately what Rome used. This is what they used. I saw a video. I went and pulled up a video to see what this was like. And I saw a guy take a bone-in smoked ham, and he started hitting it with this thing. By the time he got to 25, the paper ripped off and the bone was sticking out. By the time he got to 40, The bone fell out of the ham and left the meat on the table. That's how bad this thing was. And he used a replica, one of those. So when it says that Jesus got flogged, it just gloss over. You don't really get the picture of what's happening here. They tie him to a post. They strip him down almost nude, and they start hitting him with this thing. This thing would come around their body and rip their flesh off. I read an account that said that sometimes their bones were showing, and you could see that their internal organs would be showing through the skin. That's how diabolical this was. You know, the Jews had a limit, 40 lashes. Rome didn't have that limit. Most people died from this thing. They died from this. They didn't get to the cross. But Jesus had to go to the cross because that's what it said. That's, you know, if you go to Psalm 22, what you find is you find a picture of, you go to Isaiah 53 and you see a picture of this Jesus on a cross, okay? So he has to go through this, and there's blood everywhere. He's bleeding profusely by now. He's got shards of meat hanging off of him. His muscles have been ripped. And maybe in some spots, in a little spot, you can see inside his body. That's how bad this is. Now, they don't kill him. They don't kill him. But when you look at this and you say, wow, why? How? You get a picture of what this guy must have looked like? From here down, maybe even down the lower back into his buttocks region, there would have been deep gashes in his body, deep open wounds. There'd be some places where there was hunks of meat taken out from this thing, because it would catch him around and rip it off. And pretty diabolical, huh? Pretty grotesque, isn't it? Kind of puts a new spin on that word flogging, doesn't it? That's what the reality is. It makes it kind of look nice when you say flogging. Not until you start to think about what it really meant and what it looked like. Now, go to the next slide, Jimmy. Then the governor's soldiers took him into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. Okay? Now, go to the other picture, the picture of the thorns. There's 20 or 22 or 25 different kinds of vines that had thorns that they might have used. Don't know for sure which one. They have suppositions, but most of them would have been thick, long thorns. Let's say it's off of a mesquite tree. Okay? John, they're about that long, right? And they got like a poison on the end of them. You stick them in you, right, JG? They don't feel good for days. They'll fester up. I don't know if it was those kind of thorns. Maybe it was longer. It looks like they were, from all the pictures. We don't have any pictures. There was no cameras back then. But let's just say it was a medium-sized thorn, all right? And they make this crown, and they put it on his head. And push it down on his head. And they go back to the verse again. They stripped him, put a scar, then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head, and then they put a staff in his hand. Now go to the next one. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him again. And they struck him on the head again and again. They took this staff and they beat him on the head with this staff. You getting sick yet? What happens to the thorns as they start beating him on the head with this staff? It starts pushing him and gouging him. Now he's got thorns coming out of his forehead, maybe beside his eyes. Maybe we don't know. We don't know. And if we try to nice it up, we can say, well, it really didn't look like. Yeah, you can't do that, guys. Look at it between the lines. What's happening here? They hit him on the head, and I can only picture if they put a round vine of thorns on, and they start beating me on the head with it, with that staff. Bad stuff's going to happen to me. Right? Right? Those thorns are going to start to do some bad stuff to me, especially if they're the ones like we saw. We don't know if they are. We have no idea. And then it says, then they led him away to crucify him. Now, they're going to go up to Golgotha. Golgotha is called the place of the skull. Okay? They crucify hundreds of people there. This is a place, this is a death sentence place. They don't have access to a Victoria Fire Department fire truck where they can come up and hose this thing down. There is all kinds of blood, body parts at that place. See, we always see it as a nice place, and they just kind of put him on a cross and everything works out. You know, this place is awful. It's disgusting. There's maggots there. There's flies everywhere. There's blood, feces, urine everywhere. Because when people die, tell me if I'm right, lady, when people die, sometimes they lose control of their bodily functions and fluids come out. And I talked to Cole about it, and he said, I asked him, is that true? He said, absolutely. He said, you have no idea what it smells like, what blood and feces mixed together smells like. He said, it's awful. He said, you never forget it. And he said, that absolutely probably happened. Think about it. That these guys died and bodily fluids came out of everywhere. Now you could say, Dan, you don't know that. No, I don't. I don't know that for sure. I'm just telling you how I see it when I look at this and say, okay, what could happen so I can explain to you so you never forget it. Blood came from everywhere. There was blood. Remember, he'd been hit in the mouth. He'd been beat on the head. He had big gaping wounds in his back. They bend his feet like this so he can breathe, so he can push up and breathe. And I saw where it said that the blood will start to settle, and his pulse goes like this. And he starts breathing, can't breathe. He can't. His heart won't work right. It's starting to flutter, and so he's dying. And the only way he can make it work is he got to push up to catch a breath. He's like this, and he pushes up to catch a breath. And then when he's too tired, then he has to sag down, and it starts all over again. It starts the process over and over and over and over again. It is a hideous way to die. Hideous way to die. It is diabolical. I wrote down here, there's terror, agony, and bloodshed. That's what the cross signified. And that's what happened. You know, when he went, you know, it's when you look at this and you show the disrespect and the humiliation, the torture that was involved in it. What happens every time he pushes up? What happens? Every time he tries to take a breath, what happens? He's got all these gaping wounds in his back. And he pushes up, and it just shreds him more and more and more. And he's to the point, I got to go. It's time to go. But he's not finished. He has to talk. He has to make sure his mother's taken care of. He gets her taken care of, okay? And he has to make sure that they all know that he doesn't hold this against him. He says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They have no clue. And then he says, it's finished. It's done. The whole plan has come to fruition. It's over. The only thing that's left is for him to come out of the tomb. And he already knows that's a given. He knows he's going to do that. He had to get through this. So the next time you look at that little cup of juice, understand what you're doing and what it signifies. Understand how grotesque and how, and you know, I want you to, what it must have smelled like at Golgotha. What do you think that must have been like? What it must have looked like and smelled like at Golgotha. How awful it must have been. Now, I want you to turn back to Philippians chapter 1, Jimmy. Pull it back up to that one. You know, what does he say? Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel. That old man stood there at that cross, and it pans to the cross, and you see the cross, the name on it is Captain Miller. He's at Captain Miller's cross, and he's pleading, I hope I've done enough. I hope I've done enough. And he asks his wife, have I been a good man? Have I been a good man? When you come to the cross, pull up the invitation one. I think we've done enough. When you come to the cross, you have to ask yourself, Am I willing to do what God's called me to do to conduct myself in a manner worthy of what you just listened to? Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to make the blood and the beating and the thorns and the scourging, am I willing to make it mean something in at least my life? Am I willing to do that? And what am I going to have to do to pull that off? Because he says, whatever happens, conduct yourself in a manner worthy. In a manner worthy of the gospel. You know, and when you look at this, it kind of paints like a serene type. It wasn't like that at all. There were people there screaming for his head, and then they come up to him as he's dying and they stick a spear in his side, because what they usually did is break their legs. They'd break their legs so they couldn't push up, couldn't breathe. They stuck a spear in him, and more blood and more stuff came out. He did that so that you and you and you and you can be free. Last 2 weeks ago, we talked about Memorial Day, and I said the reason those 17, 18-year-old kids went to war, and many of them, that's what they were, 17, 18 years old, went to war, is to stop worldwide aggression. That's what they were doing. So that we could be free, and we could remain free. So we could do what we do here today. You have to ask yourself, what am I willing to do for the sake of the gospel? How far am I willing to go? Have in my own mind, in my own heart, have I done enough to make it worthy for what he did for me? The answer is most likely no. Not one of us has. But he needs to come back find us at least trying to, don't you think? Don't you think that's what he ought to try? He ought to come back seeing us trying to be the very best we can be. And if that's not where you are, that's not what you've done, then you need to come. And you need to say, I give up. I'm done. I want to live for him. Help me do that.